Hi, Kristen and Mike. Thank you so much for talking to us today about sexuality and spirituality retreats at Shalom Mountain.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, Alexis. Hi, Mike.
So let us just dive right in. So, Kristen, as a leader of the sexuality and spirituality retreats, can you give us a little overview?
Sure. I'd like to put it in the context of what people are most familiar with at Shalom, which is the Shalom retreat, right? We like to say um, this work is about becoming conscious, loving, and fully alive. And when we're talking about sexuality and spirituality, it's hard to come fully alive if we're not also integrated and connected with the fact that at our core, we are erotic sexual beings, right? So we can do all of our fear, grief, anger, and shame work, which the Shalom Retreat is great at helping us do. But if we don't actually go to the core of who we are, because our life force is erotic energy, our life force is sexual erotic energy, if we don't go to the core of who we are and integrate that and really accept that and de-shame ourselves around that, then we can get only so far in terms of coming fully into our power, our voice, our sense of who we are in the world and why we're here, right? So there'll be always be some place where we're not quite living the fullest version of ourselves. So what we do is we create a safe space where people can bring all of themselves, including their erotic sexual selves, and we use all the skills we learn in every other Shalom retreat, and we learn how to be really present with our hearts open and create space for really safe space for people to be all of who they are, including these edges around sexuality and spirituality. When we do that this is the last part, when we do that sexual energy, if we have a lot of that fear, grief, anger, and shame locked in our bodies, sexuality and spirituality get split. So we have access to sexuality or we have access to spirituality, but we don't have access to sacred sexuality or sacred sexual experiences. But when we do that deeper work and we invite all of ourselves to be present, accepted, fully alive, then those energies can come back together because they're really one and the same energies, right? We are sacred sexual beings, and that's what we celebrate and make room for.
That's wonderful. That sounds so appealing. Mike, did you know that that's what a sexuality and spirituality retreat entailed before you signed up for your first one?
Short answer, no. I after my first Shalom retreat, I I wanted that, like what Kristen just described. Like I didn't put it in those kind of terms, obviously, but this kind of I felt like the Shalom retreat was really about unpacking the trauma, but I had this like impulse to like, all right, well, what after that? Like where do you go with this? What do you do with this? Um, and in terms of like where I was in my life a year ago when I started coming to Shalom, uh, this is what I wanted to explore. I wanted to explore the deeper uh, connection to who I really am, and by extension, the deeper connection to the people in my orbit. And and yeah, so I really I had no idea what to really expect, but I had enough curiosity uh, and nervousness that fueled me wanting to go to SNS for the first time.
That's great. I love that. So, and Kristen, could you tell us who this retreat is for?
Sure. It was designed for singles, but couples often come on it when they're ready to up level in terms of their skills around intimacy. And so there's lots of experiences and invitations for people to interact in different kinds of ways, always with within consent boundaries and always at choice. So you can say no to anything that you're invited to do. But there's a lot of opportunity to interact. So singles get an opportunity to really practice new skills with lots of different people. For couples, they can often come in and do the experiences, the exercise that we have with each other, and they can choose their level of boundaries. Sometimes they do want to experience other people, and sometimes they just want to come and just be with themselves within the context. Either one is fine, and either one can work really well. So that's the first thing. The other thing, it's really helpful if people have done some personal growth work.
Mm-hmm.
So the Shalom work, the Shalom retreats is a really great place to start. If people haven't done that, it doesn't mean they can't come on the SNS, but it's helpful if they've done some personal work and are comfortable enough with some of their shadow places, their wounded places, and they have some sense of what's there. And I would say the third thing is that people need to know that this is clothing optional, and that there is explicit sexuality on the table. So while there's discretion involved as we go through the week, it's also in the air, and it's around us, so that it's important for people to know that that's part of what we're doing, and that's part of what you'll experience and see. So yeah, that's about it.
That sounds really good.
And an open mind, like an open mind and a willingness to just take new risks. That's probably one of the biggest things.
Yes, absolutely. And then Mike, flipping back to your personal interaction with the sexuality and spirituality retreats, can you tell us, as a retreatant, can you tell us what the experience gave you?
Yeah, it's at this point it's a little hard to overstate, just because I feel pretty deep in the work at this point. I think at base level, a deeper nuance and a different sense and approach for pleasure in my life, and I don't mean just sexual pleasure. I mean like the day to day, moment to moment. Like, I mean, the joke after my retreat, after my first SNS was, like my nostrils feel amazing right now. Like it's like I was able to get to a place because I was just kind of very ready to um just get very turned on a very nuanced micro level. Um and for me that's about plugging into all aspects of like what Kristen was talking about before. Um it's about that um presence and awareness and the curiosity and the kind of a sort of kind of an adventure with living day-to-day life. Um, and I've gone on 2 SNSs so far, and just the unfolding and the expansion of what it means to be myself has just really deepened, and I just feel really grateful to be able to participate in this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That sounds that sounds wonderful. I'm sure 20 people just signed up. And my nostrils feel amazing.
I love that.
I know, it's so good. Kristen, does that sound like the experiences you typically hear back from people that are joining you on retreat?
I hear all kinds of things. I get emails afterwards, and people write testimonials. I could even read a few. I don't know if that would be helpful, just like a skimming.
Sure.
These are from some of the singles: A Softer Heart,
Oh.
the ability to explore all of myself in safe and beautiful, playful ways, new layers of depth, less alien to myself. My eyes were open to a much larger world. I had access to why I'm here on the planet and a deeper sense of who I am, right? So that's some of the singles. Couples. First of all, I've had 2 engagements happen on the SNF. And that's not just couples who come, like people have met and then gone on to partner. So it's,
Wow.
you can come on and never have sex. You can have lots of sex. You can have somewhere in between. You can meet your life partner. You cannot meet your life partner, but all is on the table, right? In terms of that. But some of the feedback I've gotten from couples is finding a grounded connection, unlike anything we've experienced together before, an amazingly transformative and strengthening experience together. So
Beautiful.
yeah, it's really, really deeply heartening and honoring of the places we go, the work we do. And it really affirms that I think we're onto something.
Right.
And I don't do it alone. I don't do it alone. I have a full team. Usually there's at least 5 of us
Mhm.
assistants, and we have 2 amazing cooks, and we have someone that does sacred intimacy work. So they're working with you therapeutically. If you choose, people can work with the sacred intimate therapeutically during the retreat, so that if your stuff comes up, you have a place to go work it out and then come back into the group, back into the experiences with a fuller sense of who you are, having worked through some difficult places. So there's really a full team that puts this together.
Sounds like a very strong container.
And it's so beautifully held by Shalom Mountain, by the land and all the history of what's happened there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love those good vibes. Mike, who just, let's kind of talk to who you think, like if you were recommending this to a friend, what positions would they be in, or what would they be looking for? Who could you recommend this retreat to?
I think in similar way, like, at the end of Shalom retreats, people say like, this is open to everybody, but it's maybe not for everybody. I think there's a similar thing here. Uh, I think I want to reiterate what Kristen said about uh, it's necessary, highly recommended, if not necessary, that people do their own some sort of work beforehand. And there's people who've been on this retreat who have never been to Shalom Mountain, before, which but they're cued into themselves. Um, I think at base level, anybody who's curious about what this is, I mean, even just like thinking about like, oh, spirituality and sexuality, like what is that? Like, like what's that connection there? Like that's enough. I mean, people looking to explore um the depth and breadth of their own pleasure and their own humanness, which they obviously go hand in hand. Um, and I also just want to make a comment, like, with all this stuff about, clothing optional and everything sexual is on the table and all this, like, I feel like that's the part that might scare a lot of people off. Um, because like, I want to do sexual vulnerability work, but I don't want to have to like, have
Do
sex with
it.
strangers or something like that. Like that's not really what it is. Um I've been on this retreat partnered, but my partner wasn't there, and like was not in the least bit feeling like I was in any sort of violation territory of my partnership. And I'm monogamous. I'm not the least bit poly. So um uh I think I just wanted to say that to anybody who might be feeling apprehension about like, oh, like, I want to go, but my partner might not be into it, or I don't want to do anything torrid. It and that's ultimately what got me on this retreat was, if I'm going to work on this place, work on these pieces of sexuality and vulnerability, and like I can't imagine a better place than Shalom Mountain to do that.
Mm.
Because to reiterate what Kristen said, everything's a choice. You can say no to anything. There were people on both the retreats that I've been on that were not naked. Like it's and learning that these boundary pieces, holding your own boundaries, is the core of this work, and that's a really inspiring, beautiful thing. But just to circle back on the question, just if you're looking for a little something more and are a little bit curious and are a little bit turned on by the idea of a sexuality retreat, then this is probably a good idea.
Thank you. And thank you so much, Mike, for expanding, just giving more insight into the experience and the options. I think that you answered that beautifully and probably answered a lot of people's questions really beautifully.
The thing is, we go each day we're doing something that leads to the next. By the time we're in each place, it feels so right. It feels like you don't know quite how you got there, but it feels okay and comfortable. And there's always choice. So like what Mike's saying is there's so much reverence brought to the entire week.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And we just have a lot of fun. Like when you go to those depths, you go to those heights. And so there's times where we are just laughing and joking, as well as the depth work. We are also just having a lot of fun.
Yeah,
100%.
absolutely. Absolutely. That sounds wonderful. I also want to mention that, Mike, you mentioned following curiosity, and earlier you spoke about anxiety or fear. So if somebody perhaps has the curiosity, but the anxiety or fear is also present, they could reach out to you to talk about it, right, Kristen?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. In fact, I talk to, unless I know someone really well, I talk to everyone before they go on the retreat just to make sure they know who I am. I know who they are. We know what edges they're working, and we just make sure it's a good fit.
And there can be some cool stuff where the fear
Yeah.
pops up, right? Well, thank you, Mike and Kristen. It was wonderful to talk to you. Thank you so much for spending your time with us. It's so generous of you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, both of you. This was really fun.
My pleasure.
Great. My nostrils feel amazing.